What are you doing? Breathing. Oh my god. Hello and welcome back to my channel. This week we're obviously tackling the headdress of the throne room gown that Queen Amidala wears in the Phantom Menace. Last week I did the hoop skirt, which I'll link up here somewhere. So go check that out. Without any further ado, let me show you how I made this headdress.
So I was really naughty and I didn't film the process of how I got this hair like this, but basically I used a paper pattern, cut it out, and at the moment it's all just sellotaped together, and as you can see the sellotape is popped in some places, but I'm going to fix that now with some contact cement. So I'm going to glue all of the seams together so that it sits properly, wait for it to dry, and then I can cover it in the warbler here. Hello! As it's been a while since I last worked with Warbler, the first and only time of which was 2014, I thought I'd start with the flat bits of the headdress first, so probably this piece here. So what I plan to do is trace out just a little bit around the shape there, cut it out, heat form it to it, and then get another piece and stick it along the back.
After successfully covering this one bit of foam in Warbler, which incidentally doesn't even get used in the final headdress, I then proceeded to cover all the other pieces of foam in Warbler. For the egg shapes that go on the side here, I actually used egg-shaped styrofoam balls to help give it the shape, but yeah, everything just gets covered in Warbler at this point.
Hello. Sometimes when making things, I do silly things like forgetting to check back on my references, and then I'll make something like this and see how nice this looks, see how pretty it is, how smooth all the edges are. Well, halfway through making it, I decided to print off a life-size reference, which is what we've got here. And then if you compare the top bit to the one printed there, you can see it's not quite wide enough. So what I'm going to attempt to do now is widen the side bit while making it look nice still, and then also lengthening this back bit here because it actually curves over the hair piece. So that's what I'm going to try and do today, and hopefully I don't mess it up too bad.
As you can see here, I'm just filling in those new seams I created with some wood filler. And after that was done, I then proceeded to prime each of the layers of the headdress using about 5 layers of gesso. Once each piece had been sufficiently covered, I then let it completely dry and then began sanding back the gesso. Now that each piece was primed and smoothed, I then wanted to add some textures where places needed texture. So I drew on this pattern here, and then using a silvery puff paint, I then went in and hand painted each individual little circle and line bit that's on there. For the other bit of texture that's on there, I just dumped on the puff paint that I used before and then stippled it using some crumpled up tin foil, and that gave me this really nice foil effect once it was dry. After all the detail had been added, I then went in with a gold spray paint and did several coats to get it this lovely gold metallic colour. I then taped off the areas that I wanted to remain gold and then used a silver spray paint on the areas that I wanted to turn silver. And the final touch was dry brushing on some of that same gold spray paint onto the raised areas of all the textured patterns in the silver area, if that makes sense. Now some of the other pieces on the helm had a lace pattern on it, so I got these doilies at the second-hand shop which weren't the right colour, but luckily I have access to red dye and I dyed them red. Alrighty, so it is head fin time. As you can see, this one is done and this one is not.
So I did this one first just to test if if it was actually going to work. And it did. It's cool, I'm happy with it. So now I'll walk you through how I did this by doing this one.
The first step was to cut the doilies down into usable pieces of fabric, so I cut off the outer circle bit and then took chunks from the inside, which I liked the look of, which I then placed strategically onto the gold headfin foil part. I did this using PVA glue, which, honest to God, I wish I hadn't done because it sort of dried darker in some spots where I'd used a little bit too much. But anyway, I just clamped those down using some hair clips and left them to dry overnight. After it had dried, I removed the clips and then I began trimming the lace back so it had about 1 centimetre of overhang on the headfin part. I then used hot glue to glue these parts of the lace onto the wrong side of the fin so that it would be hidden once it was attached to the larger fin part. You'll see. Although I am using hot glue in this video to attach the lace parts to the rest of the head fin, I do go back and swap it out for a contact cement because this hot glue just did not have the hold power that I wanted for this. And honestly, that's kind of a theme throughout this. I use hot glue initially and then end up swapping it out because it was useless. I then use the nice scalloped edge of the doily that I cut off and reserved earlier, and I cover up the join of the lace part of the fin with the head fin. You can see what I'm doing here, right? It makes sense. And that gave it this nice finished edge and you didn't see all the ugly little bits of lace or the join or anything. I was quite proud of it, really.
So I just stuck this side here on using plain old hot glue because I had been struggling to find a way to actually attach them. It seems to be doing the trick, so I'll show you how I did it with this one here.
Like I just finished saying earlier, although I am using hot glue in this scene, I do swap it out for contact cement later and I leave it to dry overnight with a heavy weight on top of it so that it really stuck, and my god, what an improvement. It didn't break the first time that I tried it on. Hey. So here I am, awkwardly trying it on for the very first time. I don't have any means holding it onto my head right now other than my very well placed hand in the back, but hey, it worked. Happy with the overall fit and that it was wearable, I then decided I wanted to line it, so I'm using some spray adhesive and some felt and just sticking that onto the inside of the helmet. After leaving it to dry completely, I then trimmed back the black felt so that you cannot see it from the outside, and then I sewed a hair comb into the front just to help with it sticking onto my head.
It's wearable and it's stable. I am so stoked. So all I've got left to do now is put that one bit on the top here and the little dangly bit in front. But I have to wait for the glue to dry on that one, so it probably won't get done until tomorrow. But yeah, all I did, elastic through the back here. Easy. This one is sticking out a bit much, so I'm hoping once I have the hair roll in that it'll help it all sit nice like this. I can't hear anything in this either, so that's going to be really fun. Oh well, it's done. Haha.
Now on to the head topper. I'm using some polymer clay and an assortment of beads and pearls that I have collected. I sculpted the base out of the polymer clay and made sure that the jewels fit in it, and then I baked it in the oven, spray painted it gold, and then I stuck all the jewels on it on the places that the jewels were meant to be stuck to.
So I totally didn't get enough foam. I've still got bits there, bits there, bits there, bits there. I think one more brick will do it. But for now, I'm going to glue these 3 bits together.
By now I have learnt that hot glue does not work for anything, and I'm using contact cement to glue all of the foam cubes together. I then used a pair of scissors and sculpted the foam down to the shape that I wanted it to by drawing on it first and cutting away at it, as you just saw. Happy with the base shape, I then covered it in batting. And oop, it is the reappearance of the hot glue gun. It actually worked quite well here actually, so I'm just gluing the batting straight onto the hair roll. This helps to smooth out a lot of those lumpy areas and also gives me a foundation on which I can sew things onto later. Speaking of, it is now time to add the brown stretch velvet onto the hair roll. I stretch and pin it all in place first, and then I hand sew along the pin line that I have just created, attaching it to the head roll. I then trim back the top edge of the velvet, and once that's done I pull up the bottom edge of the velvet, pin it in place and hand sew it just like I did with the top half. Now this gives me a nice brown base to work on when I attach the hair. So I brought a few lengths of hair wefts which I sew in place by hand. My god, there is a lot of hand sewing in this. And originally my idea was to brush it over like this and hopefully set it in place using a really strong hairspray. Spoiler alert, it wasn't strong enough, so I do go in with a spray adhesive in the future. To cover the bottom ends of the hair roll, I actually took a weft and sewed it down the middle here, then cut it in half, and then I trimmed it back and glued it along the bottom edge of the hair roll. This was so I could get some hair pointing in the opposite direction to everything else that was on the hair roll so far. And here is the spray adhesive I mentioned earlier and a ratty comb that I didn't mind disposing of for this. So I sprayed it on and then just used that comb and brushed everything in the direction that I wanted. So now that I have the hairpiece half covered in hair, what I want to do is find out a way to attach it to the headdress. So what I've got is this washer here and this really heavy duty magnet which my dad found for me, and watch this. Sticks on really well and is very hard to remove. So I'm going to glue this part into the top here, and then it will eventually be covered by the rest of the hair, and this magnet part will get glued into the top of my helmet. Here I'm using a chalk pen to mark where I want the magnet and the washer to sit. And then using good old trusty contact cement, I glue the magnet and the washer in place. No, stop! Well, thank God that happened on the inside of the helmet. After leaving the glue to dry overnight, I actually went back onto the hair roll washer and sewed it in place just to give it an extra bit of security and to help it blend in a bit better with the hair. Hello, so the headdress is almost completely finished. I'm just waiting for the last layers of glue to dry on the hair roll. And I've only got one more thing to tackle, and that is the ponytail cover. And I think I have a solution for it. So what I've got here is basically a long snap bracelet with a bend in the middle. But basically, see how that just, snaps on like that? The idea is to do that around the ponytail. So I have a long weft of hair here, which I intend to use for the ponytail. And I'm going to stitch it along this hair. So that's what I'm going to do, and then we'll see how well that works. Please excuse the dirty mirror, but I just wanted to show you how long my hair is now with just one of those weft packets on, and I'm not actually sure I need the other one because this is quite thick and long. So now I just got to style it. I've just got to put a couple of those knots in it, and yeah. I'm really surprised at how well that worked. And here is a quick little montage of me tying those said knots into the ponytail. And just like that, the headdress is finished. Who wants to see me try it on? I want to see me try it on. Here we go.
I will not condone a course of action that will lead us to war.
So there you are. That is how I made the headdress for my Padme Amidala throne room gown. So, first things first, I cannot hear anything in this. It is, yeah. Well, no, I lie. I can hear my own voice echoed 1,000 times in my eardrums, and, that's a very interesting sensation. First of all, happy with how it's looking. I think I successfully achieved the headdress look of, you know, this costume, which is awesome because honestly this was the part I was least looking forward to. I am not experienced in Warbler and this whole task was just very daunting to me, so to have something that even somewhat resembles the headdress I am stoked with. After trying it on, I have a couple of little things that I want to adjust on it. At the moment it's slipping back a little bit. Even with the comb in the front here, it's still sliding it back a bit, so I'm going to put some into the sides here as well, just to give it that extra bit of grip. Since putting all the layers of hair on the hair roll, I've lost the indents that I made when I carved it in the first place. They're still there a little bit. So what I'm thinking about doing is putting some little press studs in the side here so I can bring it forward just a little bit so it sits there where it's meant to, and that can just clip in place. Other than that, it's pretty stable, and she's she's holding in there pretty well, so long as I'm not doing any party rocking moves, you know. When I do wear this with the final gown and all the other pieces, I'll be putting a brown hairspray through my own hair so that it matches the head roll and the ponytail a little bit more, because obviously my black is a bit stark contrast to the light brown that we have going on. But yeah, I'm so happy with how this all turned out. With all that being said though, happy with it, only little minor changes to make. Which brings me around to, hey, if you enjoyed this video, please consider chucking a like down below, or maybe even subscribing if you really liked it. It does help me out. I try to put out a new video each week. Currently we're working on a Padme throne room series, as you can tell. But yeah, I just do a lot of sewing, crafting and fun related content on this channel. That's about all I have to say this week. I'll see you next week when we start work on the satin pieces of the gown. Bye bye!